Hello, dear listener, dear viewer. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo, Mogobe, your host of this exciting show. Do I have a delightful and exciting guest for you this time around? This episode is jam-packed with information, with intellectual energy, and all the rest of it. My guest is Mr. Kgengwenyane. First name is Oabona Kgengwenyane, who happens to come from an engineering background, who's also an entrepreneur like myself. I do my best to bring impactful, exciting content, and this time I have an entrepreneurial engineer. Mr. Kgengwenyane, welcome to the studio.
No, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, sir.
If I was to ask you to give your elevator speech, so to say, as to who you are, what in a nutshell would you tell me?
No, thanks very much, Mogobe. My name is Oabona Kgengwenyane. I'm, as you said, an entrepreneur. I'm an engineer. I used to work in the mines some years ago and turned entrepreneur. So the entrepreneurial bug caught up with me, and I left corporate to go into the business environment almost now 25 years ago. So then I started a company called InnoLead Consulting, which we've been running for the last 20 years, grown now to about 40 employees. And that's the consulting company that specializes in project management and strategy work. So we do a lot of work with blue chip organizations here in Botswana, but now we've expanded into Africa, where we've opened offices in Zambia, Uganda, and Rwanda. So we are a very ambitious organization. We also have another entity called Digital High Technologies. It's an organization we acquired about 3 years ago to go into the technology space. As you know, with the recent COVID, technology has become a very important aspect of our life. So we've also got that. But I also am a passionate farmer. So I'm being a Botswana, cattle is a big thing for me. So we also have 2 farms where we breed Shabre and Simbra type cattle. For the Botswana market.
What is InnoLead, by the way? InnoLead, what do they consult on, or on what topics?
Okay, the way the whole idea came about was, there was a lot of debate in the early 90s and even going back to the 80s about how Botswana has packaged brilliant policies. We have very well developed by our public service, good policies, but the things seems to go off when it comes to implementation, execution. So that is how the whole idea of going into consulting and looking at what is the best area that can give the best contribution to our country. And I said, if we can find that science of execution, the discipline of saying, when I've said I want to do this, then I'll apply this method to make sure it happens.
Okay.
So project management, that art and science is called project management. And that is why, and being an engineer, having worked in the mines and projects, it was a very natural space for me to go into. So our biggest competency and where we've made a difference in the market is in the area of project management. So we train in the art and science of project management. We've got an academy, right up accreditation levels, where we train our clients to be a professional project managers, your Prince 2, your PNP, all these array of project management skills we do. We also, I'm also very interested in how to sharpen up organizations in Botswana in terms of performance and competition and that type of thing. So we're also a strategy consultant, and we've helped a lot of companies here in Botswana in terms of growth, in terms of improving efficiencies, both citizen companies and major corporations here. Your Batswanas, your major financial institutions such as Barclays. We've done that strategies. We've done strategies for a lot of the parastatals here, your SEDAs, your LEAs, and so forth. That is why we found that we've after 20 years, I think we mature enough to now take our models to the rest of Africa.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Today, dear listener, dear viewer, we're going to talk about happiness. It's a very interesting subject, and man has wanted to be happy from the beginning of time, and happiness is an issue that we have wrestled with. Mr. Kgengwenyane, what would you say is the importance of this subject? In other words, what is happiness? Can you define it? Let's start there.
Before we define happiness, just a little bit of background, Mogobe. It's an area that has really fascinated me. In terms of I've grown up in terms of friends and family, where you observe people, that one looks happy, that one looks, most of the time is in a depressive mood, is a moody person. And that always was bizarre for me. And then right now with our organizations, we employ almost 100 people. So again, that exposed me to the dynamics of the human science. And that always fascinated me, this aspect. Now, 3 years ago, I bumped onto this subject matter through reading, to say there's actually a whole array of literature and science around and research around happiness. So that's how, as InnoLead, we decided that let's jump into this and ascertain what it is. Or just to find out that it's actually a very old subject. Goes all the way to 2,500 years ago. People like Socrates, Aristotle, the philosophers who Aristotle said, there's nothing ultimate in life that we can pursue other than happiness. And even articulated the role of government in enabling happiness for its people. And all that went through to people like William James, who was one of the very renowned psychologists.
James of Harvard.
James of Harvard. And then even Adam Smith, when Adam Smith with his Wealth of Nations, he was very quick to remind the readers, in the end, you cannot just measure economic success through the financials, homo economist, as they say. You got to also look at the aspect of well-being of your people. Right through someone who is a gentleman called Simon Kuznets in 1934, who designed the concept of GDP, gross domestic product. And Simon Kuznets, he was a Nobel Prize winner for coming up with GDP. And he was very quick to caution the authorities in the States, with GDP, coming up with it, it had nothing to do with measuring the well-being of people. So caution. But unfortunately, Mogobe, the world has made GDP, financial and money, the center of everything. And I believe that in Botswana, as you know, we grew up with the whole world ululating around our economic success and money. And I think we've jumped onto that bandwagon. And I feel that we've gone overboard where we've now ignored the well-being of our people, well-rounded, happy people. And I'll talk about the benefits of having happy people for a country.
Still on the explanation, I mean, just taking it further as to why it's important for people's benefits. One looks at the American Constitution. As a lawyer, it fascinates me that they've put it as an inalienable right, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Of happiness, correct.
So can you speak to that and explain at that level why it's so significant that they've even included in their constitution in America? I noticed that we haven't explicitly included it in ours.
Yeah. And that's exactly what concerns me, that it doesn't seem to be an aspect or a subject that seems to trouble our authorities, our politicians, our leadership, to look at the broader happiness of a person. And in a minute, I'll define what I mean in terms of happiness. But like you said, in the American Constitution, it was instituted by those founders, by Thomas Jefferson, right from by John Locke, who are renowned for assisting with who've been the reference point for the American Constitution. But that, for me, that's how the U.S. in the end became the superpower it is, because the pursuit of happiness has built a culture, as I'll talk about much later. When people are happy, they are more creative, they are more innovative, they are freer, and we found that society in the States that's grown the United States to be the top economy in the world.
Was it an oversight on the part of our founding fathers?
It's a good point. I mean, they were very well-meaning in terms of obviously ingraining the principles of democracy in the country and leveraging issues of freedom. So some of them were actually captured as aspects of happiness in our culture. But deliberate pursuit of happiness, in my view, I think it was an oversight. And it's not an oversight just for Botswana, just to add, Mogobe, because what also troubles me is currently the whole world is actually realizing what money does not give you happiness. So if you talk about countries like United Arab Emirates, they have ingrained happiness as part of the foundation of the country with very, with the benefits are quite amazing. Germany, you talk about the Minister of Happiness, they've got a Minister of Happiness.
That, yes, but,
And because they have now, in education, now...
Have they inculcated it in the culture?
Oh, yes, yes. They're busy. They're right at the at the infant stages of building it in.
Yeah.
So I think countries now are realizing that, with money, we are not getting there. We still have high depression and mental health issues. Our countries seem to be rich, but not rich in terms of totality of the well-being of a person. So that is where, and that is why, where we are in development in Botswana, I believe that we should not wait to go to the certain extent where we realize too late that we have lost the plot. We can do it now. We can now reboot and say, let's build well-being. And Mogobe, this country is such a wonderful country. I think we have an opportunity to be leaders and example to the rest of Africa, so that when we enter the developed world with our aspirations of 2036, when we say we'll be a high income status country, it shouldn't just be high income status in terms of monetary.
Yes.
We should have happy people that are making the difference, where we are becoming an attraction to the world in terms of the quality of our lives.
When you look at our vision 2036, does it seem to speak to that?
Yeah, that's a big concern of mine. I've obviously, being a strategist, I've gone through the document. I have tried to talk to the authorities around it, that it will take us, even if it succeeds in taking us to the economic vision of prosperity. And a good example is, even I talked about the USA, but there is also, it's not all goodies, because the United States have achieved high economic status, but since the 50s, the rate of depression in the United States have risen 10 times. Not only depression, but depression and use of drugs and mental health. They've even come down in terms of age. Prozac, everywhere. It's everywhere. So it's because you reach that economic threshold. They even have an estimate by the scientists for it, in terms of individuals. When you reach an annual income of about $75,000 a year, any additional money does not mean anything to your income. It doesn't mean it has very little effect, even with GDP. With GDP, countries like European countries in the EU, they did some studies around happiness of the EU, and they found that actually the level of economy has grown so many times in the past 30 years, but the impact on happiness and well-being has actually not moved at all. So that's really where...
Let's bring it home. Let's bring it to Botswana, which is our third point here. How has this country, how has Botswana fared globally? How does it compare to the rest of the world?
This is where unfortunately the bad news starts. It's a very concerning development, Mogobe, where we are... let me first start with the model. The model that's been used globally with regard to happiness, we talked about the United States, but in 2012, the United Nations also decided that they should start moving away from using GDP and money as defining progress in the world. They should now start accommodating well-being and happiness of people globally. So they then designed what they call the United Nations World Happiness Report. That is published, the United Nations. Through a committee. They have a committee headed by... they have engaged a very influential economist, Professor Jeffrey Sachs. I don't know if you know him, University of Columbia.
Yes, he's written many books.
He's written a lot of books and very well renowned. And he's put together a team of experts who do all the data, collect data globally, and actually rank countries. Now, you wouldn't believe that in Botswana has never, out of 156 countries, Botswana has never been in the top 100. Secondly, Botswana
but we're not at the bottom, I hope.
No, I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting there. So out of 156 countries, I think in the last 7 years, you wouldn't believe that we are on the wrong quartile and we've been declining in terms of level of happiness, to the extent that now in the last 2 years, even the latest report, I was recently on radio discussing that specific report, which has now put us in the top 10 unhappiest countries in the world. Now, if that is not
I'm struggling not to shed a tear.
No, absolutely. and that's really what boggles my mind, because there doesn't seem to be a shake-up. And Mogobe, if you walk, I mean, I'm a farmer. I walk across this country. I go to the central Kalahari, where some of our farming areas are. You see the level of inequality. You see some people who are still in the doldrums of poverty in Botswana. I know that we, by GDP per capita, we're obviously one of the tops in Africa, but we might be aware that in terms of Gini coefficient, we're also one of the most unequal societies in the world.
Explain Gini coefficient. Don't assume my listener. I assume I know all those fancy things.
Absolutely. Yeah. The Gini coefficient is a measure of, people talk about the difference between, the rich and the poor.
Yes.
That's really a ratio that shows the gap, how big the gap is. And it's concerning for development.
Is it to
economics.
say the poor are getting poorer quickly, or the rich are getting richer quickly, or both?
The gap between, these ones are leaving the poor ones. The gap keeps growing.
Okay.
And we're actually in the top 3 in the world. This is very, very concerning. And like I said, if you don't
in terms of income inequality.
In terms of income inequality. So we are very, very divided society in terms of inequality. And equity is a very important factor. We will talk more about some of the... We talked about
out of the 160 or so nations, where are we? Are we the last 3?
I think the last one we were 148 out of 156 in terms of ranking. I mean, those are available in the internet. You can just go to United Nations World Happiness Report, and it's all in there. So we are not performing very well. And some of the things, I mean, I talk about some of the things that you observe around here. I mean, look at our education system. It's not just depressing to the students. It's also depressing to the parents. Where you have the majority of kids. I mean, where I come from in Borolong, you can't believe, senior secondary school with a pass rate of 14%. 14%. With a student of over 1,000. Number of over. I mean, this is what's happening here in terms of education. And it doesn't seem to be, we talk about emergency, state of emergency. For me, that's something that we should be stopping and saying, this needs total overhaul. Put our best brains together, a commission of inquiry, and saying, because education, that's our future.
It's not just a fire, it's a raging inferno.
Absolutely.
In terms of what's happening.
Yes,
we should really be all engaged.
Absolutely. So these are things that for me, they give us the indications that we are not a very healthy, well-being based type of society.
I always want to go on the positive. It's very, very depressing. A lot of gloom and doom. So I want to switch to the positive by asking you, how can we individually enhance our happiness? More specifically, can the level of happiness be improved by a person, by an individual, and how so? I want you to look at it at a personal level and then extend it at the national level.
Okay.
I always want to switch quickly to the positive.
No, absolutely. No, we need to do that. We need to drum up the problem so that we can hopefully capture the audience.
Yes,
and then bring solutions. Because in the end, we got to solve world problems. So in terms, first maybe let me go to the technicalities of what is happiness, because people sometimes mistake happiness as the pleasures of life. In positive psychology, they call it positive emotions. The where you feel loved, where you feel comfort, ecstasy,
pleasure.
Most
pleasure. Like orgasmic experience.
Absolutely.
If I can put it that way.
Absolutely. You did. You did. So that is called happyology. In the whole science of well-being. So there's that aspect. Now, one gentleman out of University of Pennsylvania is a guru in this field. He's called Professor Martin Seligman. He's come up with a model which I really like in terms of defining what well-being is. And he says it's got 5 aspects. His acronym PERMA, which is PERMA, PERMA. And PERMA, the first P is that a happy person has to regularly experience those pleasures, positive emotions. You know, if you're a happy person, you got to regularly, you know, when you are, like I said, you feel love with your loved one, you know, orgasms, as you say. You said it.
It's effective.
You know,
life, yeah.
you got to, you know, sometimes when you go jogging, you feel your dopamine goes up, you feel that pleasure, ecstatic. So you got to feel that way. And then after the P, there's an E. Then there's E. E is engagement. If you are a person, you got to feel on everyday purposes that you are engaged in something, some vocation. So engagement here, it works very well if you are engaged in a vocation that aligns to your strengths. And usually they say when your strengths fit with the challenge, you get into what they call flow, where you are in with the time and you don't feel time and you're really lost and you get it. I mean, like, you know.
You can do it for free.
Absolutely. I mean, these are things we talk about when I used to work in the mines. One of the things that I found out when I was working in the mines, one time I was engaged with some consultants. We were doing some work in the mines and I was one of those who were made to work with them. And I facilitated a workshop for the first time. You know, people are accusing me of making noise. The delegates were fascinated because one of my strengths is facilitating workshops. And I said, geez, this is nice. I didn't feel time.
That's great.
Those are the things that that's engagement. That's the E.
engagement. And
then there's the R. We are social human beings. R is relationships. Everybody needs you know, love relationship. You need friends. You need family. The people that invest in those aspects tend to have a very happy life. I mean, if you study people who have very long expectancy in the world, you know, who are 90-something, even 100-something. They've done studies in villages in Italy, also in South California, longevity. They found, and they discussed what really made them to live so. And they said it's family and friends and the social support. So relationships is very, very important. That's the R. And then the next one is the M, which is meaning. Everybody needs to have a sense of purpose in life. You know, we talked earlier about, as InnoLead, our purpose is to help institutions and government implement projects to make a better living for the people. That's what makes me wake up at night.
Because you're in the morning.
I'm purpose driven. That's what my staff, they're going to make sure that we know that it's bigger than the paycheck. So you have to have something in life that's bigger than yourself. That's the purpose. That's meaning. The last one is it's A, PERMA. It's A, which is achievement, mastery, where you got to have something that you master in life. So that's PERMA, tangible.
Achievement is in tangible results.
Tangible results that people like to succeed. You got to feel that you are succeeding in life. Otherwise, so that's like you see, it's a broad definition to the extent that that PERMA model, Professor Silkman has taken it to so many countries. It's built into curriculum in some schools, and with amazing results in terms of kids trained on PERMA at 10, 12 years old. Remember now they're looking at their strengths. They're focusing on their strengths. They do things like gratitude and acts of kindness. Even the drugs abuse, all those bullying, bullying comes down. So these are things that I'm very jealous because they're even built in the UK schools, in schools in South America, because they are now.
So you want to see them in our curriculum?
Oh man.
Yeah, and part of this effort is to get get decision makers to look at this,
to come on board, because I think if we do this, the other thing is the economists will benefit because.
So I would urge my listeners who needs to hear this, think who needs to hear this and make sure you share this content with the right people.
Absolutely.
Just an interjection. They carry on there.
Yes. So I just wanted to define, just using one model. There are obviously a lot of models that are used by experts.
The broader question was, can the level of happiness be improved for a person in a nation?
Now I'm getting to that. Absolutely. Yes. Now coming to a person. Now remember we've got PERMA. So improvement means you can look at those specific areas. But I'll just, maybe just one point which is very important in terms of improvement, because some people feel that maybe they cannot do anything about someone who's depressive, who's moody, and you get jealous because someone seems to be always happy. Have you seen those people who are always smiling,
always bubbling?
You're like,
doesn't matter what
the heck? Why can't I be like that? Now, the scientists out of the University of Minnesota have done a research where they found that there's actually a genetic component to happiness. There's a happiness set point for people, and they said it's 50% level across all people. on average. And they say 50% is genetics, and they've done studies on fraternal twins who are separated at birth and ascertained and found that they're actually a gene component to happiness. Yeah, you've seen those people who have personalities that are happy. You met them back at school.
I have a friend, you tell him someone has died, he laughingly says, we find him there.
He doesn't have it. And then those people, even when they are 60, they still behave same when they are 70. They never change.
Jovial, always jovial.
And you'll find that they actually can trace it back into their
genealogy.
Genealogy, whether their grandfather they took from them. So there's a gene component.
Yeah.
And then there's a circumstances component, which I say is 10%. Okay? 10 circumstances like if you are married, if you decide to go and live in Canada, because circumstances, whether you have you are a healthy person, that's the 10%. The 40% that's left, they said that's up to your own personal interventions. In other words, you can influence your own happiness. And this comes to, we're talking about solutions. What can you do to improve your life? And I'm encouraging the listeners to say it is possible out of research and out of a lot of what they call longitudinal studies where they made students across in Vancouver to do acts of kindness. And after many weeks, they found that those who were happier, it actually impacted on their performance, academic performance, because of just doing acts of kindness. Writing gratitude letters. I mean, Professor Silkman did a study with their staff at University of Penn and even students to do letters of gratitude every evening before they go to bed. And obviously they do happiness self-assessment first, and then later they found out people, after doing the gratitude letters, notes, every evening, the happiness just shot out. Because you learned, we never take time to appreciate the good things that happen to us. Just particularly us men, writing a letter to say, or a note every evening, say, I'm thankful. It sounds so quacky, isn't it? But I tried it.
But it does
and
wonders.
It makes a big difference.
Yes.
Very big difference.
There's impact.
You sleep well and say, look, I've achieved so much, even at work. What you do at work now is that, and this is something I picked also from the coach program, the Canadian strategic coach program I told you about.
You talked to me
that we have enrolled as InnoLead, isn't it? Before every meeting, we start by saying, what good thing has happened either personally or in business in the last couple of days. So and that spirit and that comment actually influences the tone of the meeting. Just that positive thing. Positivity is infectious. So everybody starts becoming positive in the meeting. And the energy levels go up. So gratitude letters, obviously spirituality as well helps a lot. It has been proved through a lot of research that people who are spiritual, they tend to.
You're not talking about churchgoers.
It's religious people. Religious is more the formal ritual aspect. Remember that people who are spiritual, who believe whatever God they believe in, and they believe in a transcendental being. Yes, beings. There's something bigger out there. Those people tend to withstand trauma better. They seem to have lower levels of divorce. They are likely to be very kind and gratitude. I love it. For instance, that if you go to church sometimes, after church they go to Princess Marina to pray for the sick. All those things are very good for the soul, and they tend to live longer. Absolutely.
Visit with
So spirituality seems to. So those who are not spiritual, if you want to consider it, it actually helps in your level of happiness. So there are other things that all
right, let me just also push you to the next point, so we can make a bit of progress. How can Botswana start at a national level? What can we do at a national level? I'm going to be more specific, but I think, because what I'm thinking, what I want to do is, I really want us to take our time. I'm going to split this talk into two parts, dear listener. We'll have part 1 and part 2. So we're still on part 1. So as we conclude part 1, how do you think as a country we can consciously and deliberately take this forward? The next session we'll go into the nitty-gritty. Right now I want you
break it down to be broad.
I just want you to be broad.
I'm with you.
Yes.
Mogobe, that is the people like us who study and research and see what's happening in the world, and we pick things that we think can help our country make a difference, not just in terms of numbers, but make a difference to particularly the neediest of our society. I mean, like I said, you see in our country the people that have money but they still struggle. You see the poor health. I have teenagers. We see at school the mental health issues that are troubling about our youth, because they don't seem to have a sense of purpose. They don't have some of the things that I talked about.
I've seen them do criticism. Some of them
they cut themselves. Suicidal. Can you believe it that globally, the global suicide rates are now higher than people who are taken by non-communicable diseases?
I didn't know that.
This was published by World Health Organization earlier this year, because something is that's why there's so much interest in well-being and happiness.
Yeah. Because
there's something wrong with the person.
Worldwide.
They're worldwide.
Yeah.
And I'm jealous that we have to do something here in Botswana before it's too late. So my first call in Botswana at a country level is that you cannot make any difference unless leadership is about influencing a people or a nation to go in a particular objective or goal. So for me, it goes back to our discussion around Aristotle, the American Constitution. In the end, my belief is that government, and even Aristotle put this very well, he said, a government is there to enable, to make possible. I really love that man, Aristotle, 2,500 years ago. These guys are brilliant.
Yes.
So that's what now I look to government to make a difference. So without investing
is to create an enabling environment.
And lead means you go to plant the seeds for something that will make a difference to the country.
Yes.
So without, and unfortunately or fortunately, we've got political leadership that we've charged with making that difference. You are following? So in other words, this aspect of well-being needs to be implanted, or we need to invest in political capital where the president and his lieutenants drive this matter, because it has to infuse into our public service and political discourse to say all this that we are doing is for the common person. People don't vote to have more money.
No.
I know there are people that are right at the bottom of the scale who a little bit of money can make a big difference. But in Botswana, in terms of our GDP level, I want more greenery. Yes.
For what? To create
better communities. I mean, some of the things that we are doing, Mogobe, are so sad, because this country, as you know, there's a principle of Ubuntu, Botswana, community, visiting each other, not having big walls with electric fences, with big dog. That is not who we are. For me, that is why we are deteriorating, because we are losing some of the goodies that we should have inherited from our forefathers.
That in terms of culture.
In our culture. So for me, this is where the leadership have to try and start building. I mean, I'll give you a very silly example where it's not built into our public discourse or development process. I stay in Mompoloki. In Mompoloki, we just have developed this new dual carriageway going into the south.
Yes.
And, a very beautiful dual carriageway. But my thinking was, people are taking up walking and cycling. Wouldn't it be nice to have a cycling path
on the
highway in parallel, just alongside the highway, so that people can cycle to Boate and back free of traffic. People can jog to
safely.
I was like, please do that. And none of that.
And it wouldn't have cost that much.
Absolutely. We do developments in Gaborone. We bring down the trees with ease. Nobody asks any question. We need trees. These are people who happy people again. They spend time in nature. Nature helps you to that's why I'm a farmer as well. I run to the bush to try and re-energize from a nature point of view. So we've got to develop our cities, keeping the trees, keeping the parks, art as well.
But I want you to talk in terms of a national strategy. How do we do this? Do we have workshops? I want us to be a little workshops with our leaders. How do we inculcate this idea? How at a practical level, generally speaking?
No, absolutely. The first thing, I think I will pick on the workshop, because I've talked to Professor Seligman.
Yes.
I called him through, because you got a University of Penn locally, so I engaged with them.
Yes.
They gave me permission. And you can't believe it. This is the #1 guru. He was the chairman of the American Association of Psychologists, Professor Seligman.
Yes.
I talked to him, he said, people know Botswana because of the. He said the first thing he said is, I've been talking about, you've got a beautiful country, da, 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 da. And I said, no, I need you now for different things.
Yes,
I need you to come help me influence authorities to build this. And he said this year he's terribly busy, but he'll make time for Botswana. So what we are trying to do is, again, go to the authorities and see whether they can, because it helps when you have an expert who now can break down how we can
Mr.
build.
Kgengwenyane, wouldn't you just love to have the Botswana cabinet and the Botswana members of parliament in one room, yourself and Professor Seligman, and spend 2 days on a workshop and to see what you can do?
Man.
Wouldn't that be lovely?
You got it.
Can you and I work towards achieving that?
That would be 110%.
I'm saying to the listener, please help us make this a reality. Because I've just thought of it now when you talked about the importance of inculcating this through the leadership. Yes, so that it's trickled down from the top down. Okay.
And just to give you an example, Professor Seligman has he's been invited by Sheikh Maktoum of UAE.
Yeah.
He's spoken to the leadership of the UAE, in a conference.
UAE is
workshop.
relevant because they're in our level. In the
Exactly.
60s, they were exactly where we were.
Absolutely. Now, the rest is history.
But
he's talked to the authorities in Australia. He knows exactly what needs to happen, where you can start.
Okay.
Because one of the things that I wanted to say is that once they've appreciated that, then it's easy to even have a minister dedicated to happiness. Because obviously it's a political decision.
Okay.
Yeah, with me. Then it's also easy to build into the Ministry of Finance, such that we don't premise our reporting on GDP and economics alone. GDP is part of broader well-being. Money is important, but it's not all in money.
Okay.
There are other parameters as well.
Okay. What I would like you to do is to wrap up there. I'm going to give you an opportunity now in the second part to go into greater detail.
Okay.
I'd like you first to tell the listener where they can reach you if they want to reach you for further discussion, and then to encourage them to subscribe to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom. Then we wrap this up, and then of course the next episode we go into the weeds now in terms of happiness and go deeper.
Okay.
So I encourage you, dear listener, after we wrap up, please listen out for part 2 of this of Mr. Kgengwenyane's visit with us.
Oh, great pleasure, sir. Thank you so much. As been said, Oabona Kgengwenyane from InnoLead Consulting. I'm reachable on InnoLead at innolead.co.bw or cell number 71303682. We are reachable to discuss the subject, whether to build in happiness within your organization, which is very important, or look at individual, how you can prove it. Where we can't, we obviously give you references. For instance, if you want to do your own assessment of your happiness level, please go on to the site called AuthenticHappiness.org for Professor Seligman. In that website, they've got all tools to assess where you are in terms of happiness level, because the best thing to start improving is to know where you are. So again, congratulations, Mogobe. Thank you very much. I really had a great time.
Yes.
And all the best. And please do subscribe to Mogobe Nuggets and all the best.
Okay.
Thank
you very much, dear listener. Please, watch out for the next episode, which will be part 2 with Mr. Kgengwenyane. Thank you very much indeed.